Welcome to the MMA Fan Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Stu and Blake.
Harry and George, welcome back to the show. Thanks for coming on again and giving us your time. How are you doing?
I miss my body fat now. It's too fucking cold.
You've picked the worst time to cut weight, haven't you, in December?
Yeah, I have an abundance of body fat at the minute. It's like we're nearly at the point where our weights cross for the first time in, I think, in our 20s.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, it's like I'm coming up. I think in the next few days, George will be lighter than me for the first time in forever.
I did see on the socials that George is looking in incredible condition. Harry, I just see your post that you were smashing burgers and shortbread, mate.
Yep. Yeah. Well, there's this nice cafe called the Garage near Pete's Gym in Newcastle, and it'll probably be the last Newcastle trip of the year, depending on how the fight is, and my card is probably dying. So I had to be like, well, I need to just go all out. So I got big steak burger, got like the extra cheese and the bacon, and then I got a shortbread, and I tipped the guy. I gave a tip just before he went to select the shortbread slice. So he noticed the tip, said thank you, and then looked for the biggest one to give me. It's just a pro tip.
You give your tips before you get your food.
It's always,
especially when they're serving at the counter.
Yeah, if you can ever give your tip before you get your food, do it. That's just a rule. Then he found the biggest one, and like the caramel in it was that thick. It was like as thick as my teeth. Oh, it was so nice. So I'm heavy.
And I was just on the chicken salad and Americano. So
the best tipping kind of like sketch I think I ever saw was on. Do you remember that show Third Rock from the Sun, where they were aliens? Yeah. There's this brilliant one, John Lithgow, who I love. He's obviously an alien. He's only just learning the process of like tipping. And in America, obviously very different. If you don't do like 15-20%, they'll like hunt you down with dogs or whatever it is. But he lays like all the dollar bills on the table, and he's like, right, here's your tip. For everything good you do, I will increase the tip. For everything bad you do, I will take away from the tip. And the waitress is like on her first date, she's like, oh, okay. And he's like, so what are the specials? She's like, I'm going to have to check with the chef. And he's like, oh no, he starts taking money away from the pile. It's a really good little sketch. It's really good. But we digress. Because the reason you're on the show, you don't remember that one?
And then like there's a bit where he gets delivered a pizza, but it doesn't have the little table in it. So he just doesn't give the tip.
It's a great show. But we're not here to talk about.
Levitt was on it, wasn't he? Like before he became all Hollywood
with his long hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a great show. But we're not here to talk about Third Rock from the Sun as much as we can do a separate podcast about that. But George, you're fighting Mehdi Ben Lakdar. Cage Warriors 131, I believe, on Friday the 10th for the vacant lightweight belt. I believe that's right.
Yep,
I think it is
correct.
So Harry, one of the first things I saw about this was a post you made saying that if George wins the belt, it'll just make him extra annoying. So I just wanted to know how annoying is George possibly going to get if he wins?
Right, so we need to dive into like the current annoyance of George, which is he'll get like annoyingly enthusiastic about stuff where you're just like, yeah, so like at the minute, because he's dieting, he'll be like enthusiastic about, oh, these dates that I've bought are really, really like, and he'll like ramble about how like the dates, they're nice. Like, I don't care. Stop talking. Or just he'll come up to like, I'll just be sat by myself in my room having a bit of peace, and he'll just come in and then sit down. There'll be like a prolonged silence of, do you know like on that episode of Father Ted where there's like, no thanks, I'm fine. That guy, he kind of does that, but then he'll occasionally just come out with, I made my porridge a bit differently this morning. What I did was, I'm like, I feel like when he becomes champ, it'll be worse not because he'll keep going on about being the champ or anything. I just think it'll boost his confidence in the saying really annoying shit about what he had for breakfast, or he'll come out with some more just dumb, obvious.
To be fair, I've got a nice phone on my camera now, so instead of just boring Harry with it, I might inflict it upon the world.
Yeah, it's like I made some fried rice the other day because George has got a nice new phone with a really nice camera. He was like, "Wait, don't eat that," and then started like taking photos of it, and I'm like, "Can I just eat my food?"
I'm intrigued as to how differently did you make your porridge? Like, what was so interesting about the porridge?
Well, I'm always coming up with different strategies. Like the biggest revelation, because it's quite festive, was my recent porridge. Is like fresh orange slices, which I thought would just kind of wilt and just dilapidate, but they stay juicy. Cinnamon and ginger, and also walnut, and it's like a little like Christmas cakey porridge.
Did that pick up on the camera, George? Oh, it's like a little Christmas cakey porridge. His hand did that.
That's the heat rising up into the porridge.
I'll tell you what, George, I'm on board with that. I think that sounds pretty special, mate.
Yeah, it sounds nice, but it's like that's the first time you've heard that. It's not the first time I've heard that.
Well, George, I mean, importantly, like you're fighting for a Cage Warriors world title. Like, what does that mean to you? How much does that mean to you to be fighting for the belt?
The thing with the title, even though it's got its great lineage, is you can't really think about the title until it's won. You've just got to think about the process kind of aspects of it. Like, so the main effect is it's changed the training because it's training for 5 rounds and it's training for the opponent. Those two are like the actual real things that you can affect. Whereas thinking about the title's lineage and what it means afterwards, I don't know. Think about that when I win it.
Yeah. No, that's sensible.
Do you think fighting 5 rounds suits a fighter like you more than 3?
Yeah. I really love 5 rounds. I really love the idea of 5 rounds. Because if you watch my fights, you know, apart from the Madas fight, which was like a bit of a late notice fight, I'm always, Harry as well, we're always building and winning the last round and getting better shots off towards the end of the rounds. So I think it just suits both of our styles.
I got booked for 5 rounds once, and it ended in the second. But it was like, yeah, the preparation can get a bit horrid, but because it's like doing explosive stuff for 15 minutes isn't too bad. But then when you start stretching it out to like 25 minutes, half an hour of like full whack explosive MMA training stuff, it can become quite difficult. But it's a good challenge. It's a good struggle.
I've also seen stuff saying that you've got a Chuck Liddell mindset coming into this fight. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was more about, especially before having this title fight as well, is sometimes people get a few wins and then they try and negotiate themselves into the title fight, or they win a belt and then they try and negotiate themselves into the UFC. Whereas I'm just very simple-minded and I want to fight. You know, before I had this title fight, I knew I'm going to fight on this double trouble. And then when I win the title, I'm not going to want to sit back and try and wait for a UFC opportunity. I'm going to want to defend it actively. Just this idea that if I take a fight, maybe if I could have waited around for a title fight, but then I take a fight and someone beats me, then I wasn't ready for a title fight. Or if I win the title and then I want to defend it actively and then someone beats me, well then that's like I wasn't the greatest champion. So I just want to fight actively and beat people. It's more about the competition than trying to angle my way in to string a couple of wins and then just trying to wait and negotiate stuff.
I will fully use George winning the belt as a way to angle my way in and negotiate my way into a title fight. I'm all for that. So yeah.
Perfect.
I'll go with my Tito Ortiz mentality if we're going to go back to the old thing. I'll start saying the words in my sentences in the wrong order.
You'll be mayor of Middlesbrough in no time.
Actually, yeah.
Have you seen him? Yeah, he was governor of where was he governor? I
don't think he was governor. I think he was on some
he was on like some kind of congressional
and
something or other local election.
Shot of him because he was spouting. I mean, because he was spouting bollocks, but it's like anyone who's followed MMA for any amount of time knew that's what you were getting into when you elect Tito Ortiz. You're getting into the king of spouting bollocks. Like that's what he does. Like he's hilarious. He's one of the most unintentionally hilarious human beings.
I think his best line for me is when someone asked him, "So will you be fighting in the autumn?" And he said, "Yes, I'll be fighting in April."
Oh, incredible. And so I thought it was really honourable what you said there about the fact that you just want to be active and and if you did take a loss before you got that title shot, then you wasn't ready for that. But we've seen so many people win that Cage Warrior strap and then quite quickly make their way into the UFC. If that call comes, are you gonna take that?
Definitely, yeah. But I don't want to just sit on the shelf and not compete and wait for the call.
Yeah.
And have you got any thoughts on Joe McColgan? Because obviously he's going to be coming back. He's vacated the belt, but he said he's going to be coming back. So have you got any kind of eyes on him? Would you want to fight him before potentially moving to the UFC, or are you just like, if the UFC come knocking, I'm going?
Win this belt, and I definitely want to fight Joe McColgan. Even if there's opportunities for the UFC, I definitely want to fight Joe McColgan because he hasn't lost his belt by being beat. So it just have to make it right. Would have to fight Joe McColgan and beat him. That's
important for you. You need to make sure that you beat the guy that was the champion. As you said, he wasn't beat. He didn't lose his belt. He vacated it. And do you feel that is a certain type of like validation? If you win the belt to truly validate yourself, you need to beat Joe.
Yeah. And it's just like a bit of respect with it as well, because some champions just try and cling onto the belt even if they can't make the fight, and it holds up divisions and it goes quite tricky. Whereas that's a really honorable thing he's done, is to vacate the belt, let the division move on, and then he'll come back and fight. So out of respect, I've got to give him that fight.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Harry, are you going to be in George's corner, or will you do what he does and just watch YouTube videos while he's fighting?
Well, I don't have a fight, so it's like I'm in full coaching mode the whole trip this time. It's different when we're both fighting, but no, I'm full on coach. So I'll be in his corner. I'll be giving it about 75-80% of my full attention.
Yeah. Is there going to be like YouTube just set up in the corner so you can kind of flick between the two?
Well, just the York Hall is quite old, so you just got to keep there'll be a leak in the roof that'll probably be having to dodge some people. There's just other things. I might say hi to some of the people from Middlesbrough who've come through. But yeah, a solid 80% of my attention will be going on George.
Right,
well, I'm sure it'll be enough.
How comes you're not on the card? Was that because you knew obviously your brother's fighting for the strap? Did you think, right, well, okay, I'll focus on working and training with him, or was there another reason why you wasn't on the card? Because normally we see you both on a Cage Warriors card.
I did want to be on the card, and I wanted to get 4 fights in this year, but it was my ribs were knacking after the death fight, and I think even going into the death fight, I was a little bit run down from just being in fight camp mode, after fight camp after fight camp after fight camp, where I'm smaller and skinnier for the weight class as well. So it was even though I was keeping my strength, I was still getting a little bit more skinny and worn down a little bit. And then I got really ill before the death fight and just all sorts of stuff. So I feel when George got the call for the title, I was like, right, okay, I'm not going to fight on this card. That I'll just focus mostly on getting George ready. And I think this just couple of months of just hammering the strength training and putting loads of calories in me has done me a world of good. Like I feel like the performance in the death fight was nowhere near my best, really. But I feel like this period where I've got like an off season is helping that, and I feel like I'll be back like full strength, or even better next time. But yeah, I feel like there is the sort of focusing on George thing, but I do just want to scran loads of food and do bicep curls.
Yeah, I remember when I got the news that I'll be fighting Mehdi for the title. Harry was like, "Okay, so I'll sit this one out to focus on you." Within about 5 minutes, he gone and got 2 eclairs from the fridge. One of these hipster beers he's been drinking, or whatever it is.
No, I'm not into the hipster
Or a stout or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not too keen on hipster beers. It's like IPAs. I don't like the sort of like fruitiness of them.
You've got some eclairs and some beer.
How do you feel camp's actually going, George? How do you feel camp's going?
It's gone really, really well. I would have thought, like, because I've been doing extra rounds to prepare for the 5 rounds and everything's increased that bit. Sparring, the rolling, the pads and all the other stuff. But despite that, I'm pretty much at the end of camp now. I've got like a handful of sessions, like 3-4 hard sessions left until just staying loose next week. And despite all that, I've had no niggling injuries, no nothing, not felt run down off it. It's weird. Normally, every fight camp, you've got something just niggling. Not like an injury, not some kind of whatever, but just something's a bit broken down. Like before the Truman fight, my back was really hurting all the time. And that's not like an injury. It's just you train really hard for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever. You're going to have something a bit sore by the end of it. But I don't at this point.
Brilliant. And do you find it difficult? This is a question for both of you, I guess. But do you find it difficult to analyze an opponent that is undefeated? Because I suppose you have to be the first guys to put together a game plan and a blueprint to work out how to get the job done, how to defeat that guy. And it's not been done before. So how difficult is it to create that game plan and analyze someone that hasn't been defeated yet?
Well, you've been.
No, it hasn't been too difficult to make a plan for Mehdi, really. It's like with every advantage you can have in combat sports and in mixed martial arts, there are inherent disadvantages. So it's just, you can see a lot of, like, there's a lot of stuff that he does, and it's like there's similar things that other fighters have done and come unstuck because of doing things that way. So I don't want to go like too into details with it, but it's like there's still lots you can see and lots you can build around and lots of like bits of the puzzle you can put together. Like the fact that no one's gone out and done it might actually play at your advantage a little bit because they've never experienced it, at least in competition. But there's probably some guys in the gym, but yeah, I mean the closest he come was the draw with McColgan. McColgan gave him loads of trouble. Obviously, like McColgan and George are very different fighters, so it's like, but like clicking things together that way. Well, yeah, I don't see the fact that he's undefeated as anything more of like a challenge, really. I think it's just it's very like facts. It's very kind of like you just got to be very cold and analytical of it. Almost like when you're watching their fights, the results of the fights you're watching and studying don't matter. It's just what happens in the fights matters.
If you're trying to rely on their losses as what their weakness is, if you look at my last loss, there's a lot that you can't really take away from that anymore. Because I had the one loss against Badas Flaminas in
2019, October 2019.
Yeah, 2019, where I haven't lost a round since that fight. in both my Bellator fights and now both the Cage Warriors fights, I haven't lost a round in any of those fights. And I've made a lot of adjustments from that fight. So it's like, if you watch that one loss of mine and based your whole game plan on that, that would be a mistake to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the small fight. I haven't had a takedown converted on me since the small fight. I haven't hit someone proper flush in the head with, and they've just took it since. Yeah, like it's almost like sometimes when you're studying someone and they've got beaten a certain way, you've got to take into your expectations that they're going to be prepared for that certain thing. Whereas with an undefeated guy, you don't have to think about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Do you both watch tapes of upcoming opponents, or do you leave that to you coaches, George?
So what happens is, it's been interesting as well when we both fought in the same card, is like, we'll watch more of their opponent. Like, Harry will watch more of my opponent and I'll watch more of Harry's opponent, because you need to watch a bit of tape, but you don't want to like set yourself up for almost false expectations in a way. It's better to be more clear-headed and let someone else analyze it.
Yeah, so it's like I've been doing a fair bit more for this one, and it's like, because I haven't had my own fight to prepare for, I've been able to sort of be Mehdi in sparring. If you like, I've been able to like do an impression of him and just go like full out with that. Like even in my own rounds of shadow boxing, I was just fuck it, I'll just be Mehdi for a bit. It's been all right, been decent fun. It's just very bouncy back and forth with all the extra weight. I'm not too keen on like all the stress it's putting on my calves.
Semi-Claire's, mate. And just you're talking about, you've got 5 hard sessions left before you sort of get a little loose in the week up to the fight. And you mentioned sort of sparring, and I always like to sort of ask guests like what their approach is to sparring, and is it something where you train and it's part of your game plan? Do you spar hard? Do you spar regularly and hard, or you hear other fighters talking now about sparring very, very rarely now, and your Lawlers and your Holloways and stuff. I just wonder what your approach is to sparring. Both of you that can go to.
Well, it's like out of camp without a fight, there's actually probably more volume in terms of time spent sparring, but it's that very light, like the more like Thai style play sparring, where you're not really taking much damage, but you're getting that opportunity to practice your footwork and see shots coming in and then develop your own tools. Whereas like up into the run up to a fight, the volume decreases, but it gets a bit more intense.
Yeah.
And the shots are thrown a bit more hard, but it's not like complete trying to knock each other's heads off, unless it's like me and Harry sparring with each other.
Yeah, and I think it's like mid camp, I would say, is when the spar, like mid to late, sort of like the late middle of a fight camp, I think is when sparring's at its heaviest. And then, because I used to spar too hard, like in the weeks leading up to the fight, whereas now it's like we sort of taper that down just a little bit and do more like stuff where we'll sort of alternate bad positions and pads and stuff, just other ways of it being really horrible. But yeah, like more volume out of camp, more intensity in camp.
And, I think me and Harry both said this, as our careers go on, we'll probably do a bit less and less hard sparring. Like you brought up Max Holloway. Max Holloway, reportedly does no sparring now, but that's off the back of a huge amount of experience, and he's probably put thousands of rounds in sparring.
Yeah.
So he's already had that.
Harry, you pulled a face there. Do you think he is sparring and he's just not telling people about it?
He's not like sparring in the sense of like how boxers spar, where I don't think he's like like doing big digs in the gym and like hitting each other hard. But he's said he's moving around with people, so he's getting people to like move at him and sort of like throw stuff, and he's kind of like getting his reads and getting. So he's kind of like sparring in a very, very, very light sense. So he's still keeping his eye in. He's not totally non-sparring. Like when Lawler did his Strikeforce run, and he actually wasn't. and you could kind of tell in the fights that he wasn't, because he didn't seem to have his eye in or like have any sort of gauge of distance. But then when he sort of like would land a few shots, he'd be like, okay, now I can kind of, he would like build into the fights. But Holloway is still keeping his eye in a bit, and I think his coach comes from Muay Thai a bit more, where like with the pads of a Muay Thai style pads, they're like throw more back, so he's still getting plenty of like defensive work and stuff in. Oh, I'm saying that in his last fight, he didn't really defend much. He just sort of walked forward. So fuck knows, I might be wrong.
But before we ask you one last question about your fight, there's another lightweight title fight that's coming up very, very soon. Oliveira defending his belt against Dustin Poirier. Do you guys have any thoughts on how you think that's going to go?
I think because Oliveira's stance is very tidy, and everyone gives him like the props for having that good stance, good balance, hands high. But the way Poirier shifts when he strikes, it opens up Poirier, but it's also a good way to get around someone who stood just hands high. So as Poirier shifts and throws his hooks at funny angles, I think it can come around the guard. I'd probably edge it to Poirier over a 5-rounder.
I think if Oliveira, I think tools that would be important for Oliveira would be like front kicks up the middle, knees up the middle. I wouldn't. He likes upper body takedowns, but I think if you're going against Poirier, upper body takedowns are not a good option. I think you'd probably have to go for his legs a little bit. For Poirier, it's just trying to like create collisions, really, like time, like do non-committed stuff that he likes to do, and then time Oliveira coming in to attack him, and then that's when he can pick his spots and do his bursts. So, like people say, oh, his boxing's so ugly, but it's like no, it's not. It's really good, but it's just because it doesn't fit the textbook of you've got to be punching like this and this and this. Like he's like swinging with his hips and he's generating power properly. But I think if he just times those spots to get his big burst and his big shifting stuff in, I think he's going to give Oliveira a lot of trouble.
Well, the most important lightweight fight of the year isn't that fight. It's George Hardwick against Mehdi Ben Lakhdar. How do you think that fight is going to finish? How do you see the end of that fight happening?
I've mentioned my style. I think it's good for 5 rounds to like break him down over the rounds, because he can be quite fidgety, he can be quite defensive. But then it depends, because sometimes he'll fight really on the back foot and bounce around a lot. Sometimes he fights really coming forward a lot. So, without going into what I'm going to do exactly, it's kind of dependent on which one happens. So, his last fight with Steve McIntosh, he's like holding onto the cage. He's waiting. He's almost like primed like a sprinter, and then he sprints out into the middle, which is fantastic for me. Be fantastic for the fans as well, because that's what I do in all my fights pretty much.
Wonderful.
I hope George wins, I guess. The belt would be nice in the gym. If he does win, I want him to at least take a few good digs. I think it'd be funny if he got sat on his ass, but George probably by like some kind of finish, maybe.
I love the support. It's a very supportive brother you got there, George.
Oh, gentlemen, honestly, it's always a pleasure to have a catch up with you in the chat. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on again today. And mate, obviously, all the best for the Cage Warriors strap. And once you win it, then we want you back on. We want to come and talk about, we want to talk to the champ.
What you'll see is there'll be like much fatter cheeks on it.
They'll just be bechamel and cheddar and I think.
You'll get a Parmo the size of a bin lid.
Looking forward to it. Parmos and pizzas all round, guys. Well, thanks very much.
Just George's dirty secret there. All the pizza crack and like Cage Warriors. He's not even like, if the choice was, what takeaway are you getting? Pizza would be like very low down on his list. It was like probably Parmo. Indian, Chinese. Then I don't know.
I like Indian, but because of the amount of pots, it's not as easy to have a good hygiene rating at an Indian compared to like with a pizza. It's easy for them to have a good hygiene rating. It's just the dough to stick it in. It's in the oven. It's clean. Whereas like because of the amount of pots and everything, I've had some bad experiences with my guts.
Well, we definitely don't want that, especially leading up to the fight, mate. All the best with the weight cut. All the best with the fight. And yeah, hopefully we can have you back on as champ in a little while.
Right. Thank you very much.
Cheers, fellas.
Thanks very much.